It has taken me forever to get around to making this video, but here it is. I'm doing it, or at least part one. I have no idea how long this is gonna take, but yeah. So a few months ago, I was lounging around the house looking for some stuffs to read for my upcoming video, and my dear mother recommends me a manga. Now, my Ima doesn't read manga. She put me onto anime in a lot of ways, but as far as I know, she has never read a chapter in her life. So naturally, I'm interested. I want to know more. I look it up and I'm like,
hold up, wait a minute.
This series has over 700 chapters. I kid thee not. And that's basically when I was like, well, I guess I'm reading like it all. Now, I could have taken a cheap route out of this. I could have read 100 chapters or so and some summaries and watched some breakdown videos, formed an opinion, but no. I didn't take the easy way out of this. After reading it, I couldn't. I was hooked to this series that I previously had no idea even existed. I read and I read and I kept on reading, and I can undoubtedly say that I love Kingdom. No joke. This manga may be one of the most wildly underrated yet popular series, so let's cue the intro. I say wildly underrated because I've come to know that there is a strong community of readers that love this series just as much and more than me. However, there's a massive amount of people out there that have never heard of Kingdom before. It's sad to say, before my email suggested it, I had never even heard of it before, despite the 700 plus chapters, despite the live action, despite the anime that just reached its 4th season and boasts an 8.5 IMDb rating. It's just not all that talked about, at least where I'm from. Disclaimer though, although the series is set in China, I'll be using the Japanese names for the characters simply because that's how I read it. It was a little confusing at first, but at this point I've read 31 too many names to translate just for this video, so thanks. Let's set the setting. Kingdom is set in a fictional rendition of a period in Chinese history known as the Warring States period, which began roughly between 481 BC to 403 BC and ended in 221 BC, when Yin Zheng, king of Qin, succeeded in conquering the other states and unifying China. There are multiple characters that are based upon real historical figures. However, it's not surprising that most of the characters are completely fictional. So what's the tale thus far? The story follows a boy named Xin during the Warring States period of ancient China. He and his closest friend Pao are war orphans working as servants in an impoverished village in the kingdom of Qin. But they have a dream to become generals. Not just any generals, but the great generals under the heavens. Thus, they train daily, dueling each other with like sticks and just building up the strength and reaction time and all that good stuff. One day, Pao is taken to the palace for an unknown purpose by a minister, and Xin is left behind. A few months later, Pao returns to the village, nearly dead. With his dying breaths, he urges his friend, his brother, Xin, to travel to a nearby village. There, Xin meets a boy nearly identical to Pao, who just happens to be Yin Zheng, the current king of Qin. Now, up until this point, I was having a bit of a hard time getting into the kingdom. Even reading this, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but this is where I first realized what Kingdom is all about, rather what half of this manga is all about, but we'll get back to that later. Xin learns that Piao was brought to the palace to serve as a body double for Ai Sai, whose Chinese name in actual history is Yin Zheng, the emperor. The king's younger brother is currently vying for the throne, and Piao was gravely wounded in the power struggle that ensued. But due to his willingness to act as the king's double, it allowed Sai to escape the palace, and this is why Piao so desperately wanted Xin to find the king. Xin is furious, but eventually decides to aid Sai in rejoining with his men and with the help of a child named Karyo Tin. Furthermore, helps the king in ousting his younger half-brother and reclaiming the Qin throne. And this is what hooked me in, because the bond that grew between Sai, Xin, and Karyo Tin kept developing into something extraordinary. How people from seemingly nowhere could change the direction of kingdoms. And I think their bond grew from them all coming from a similar place. Sai's upbringing was far from plush. As a child, he was unable to put his trust in others due to the abuse he suffered from his mother and the people of Zhao. This all occurred during his exile from Qin. However, it was only upon meeting Shika, the smuggler that rescued him from Zhao and brought him to Qin, that he began to see that there were good people in the world. And as a result, his character began to develop into what it currently is. Now, Sai's goal is to unify all of China and the Central Plains under the banner of Qin and become the emperor of the new nation. And with it, destroy all states, including Qin's borders, and bring an end to the endless wars of the current era. He plans to put in place a legalism system in which all citizens have the same rights and duties without privileges or discrimination, and the law is above every person in order to keep the status quo and avoid conflicts. Yet he recognizes that such a world is not possible without completely conquering every last state there is. So yeah, there's that. Essentially, Sai is willing to pay the toll for peace, and this is where his dream coincides with Shin's. To do this, he needs a new era of generals to rise through the ranks and unite China by the sword while he politics and leads from the throne. And that's where our boy Shin comes in. Shin is basically Sai's sword, the most trusted vassal of the king, and like I already talked about, that bond that they share is no small thing. In a court of scheming nobility and traitors all around, Shin is one of the few that Sai can trust to do his bidding, but he first needs to prove himself so that he can actually become a general, and Sai can officially give him the titles necessary to carry out what he needs to do. And this is what I was trying to get to earlier, the two halves of Kingdom. You have the philosophical side of things, a lot of talk about strategy and the ethics of war. The court politics takes up a sizable chunk of the story as well. And then the other half, which is brutal battle after battle after battle. Warriors are just evolving in the heat of the moment and reaching new heights with each and every fight. And the amalgamation of these two seemingly extremes is where the beauty of Kingdom lies, in my opinion. And I already told you, this mug is 700 chapters, and I don't want to summarize the entire manga right now. Furthermore, I would be doing you a disservice by trying to just ramble through all the key moments within this amazing series under like 10 minutes. So read it for yourself or watch it, or if you really want full series summaries, we can talk about that later. However, there is one point that I do want to touch on, and that's warfare. I've seen some praise this series as the best war arc in all of manga, and I'm not gonna lie, I haven't read a lot of historical fiction or seen any other wars in manga, at least like this. So I can't really say, but I am a big fan of shows like Last Kingdom and Vikings, and I've never seen something quite like that set in China, and it is epic to read about. With that said, Kingdom is not a very accurate depiction of war, in my opinion. Vagabond or Vinland Saga, I think you'll find a bit more realistic representation of martial conflict. Okay, aside from Thorkill slugging entire trees at people. I mean, it's all fiction, and that's completely okay. I like seeing them do what they do. I'm not gonna complain that my guy is steady cleaving like 10 people in half with one swing, but the whole thing is a bit more like a fantasy manga based upon historical events and characters with some supernatural tidbits. I say fantasy, not meaning like mythical or creatures or all of that, more just in the sense that they do some kind of unrealistic stunts. However, it still all fits within the context of the story. The only supernatural tidbits that I can say more deal around Chi and their faiths and beliefs. So when dealing with the Bushin or the priestess dance that Kyukai does, favorite character by the way. And I think that Kingdom does this really, really well. On the flip side, the dialogue and the discussions pertaining to war are some thought-provoking stuff. I mean, it can get seemingly redundant at times when you hear like 10 generals in a row talk about starting a fire on the battlefield, be ablaze. But as you get introduced to more and more characters, you get to see how more and more people fight. And once you hit a point where everyone's basically strong, that's where a lot of the battles get fun. Asking yourself like, how does this guy fight? Or he's an instinctual general and this guy's a strategist, and watch how their motivations to win play off each other. So yeah, Yasui Sahara really goes all out in the theater of war. Additionally, I love the scale of these wars. Due to the fact that this is in ancient China, there is a massive number of soldiers on the battlefield. If you look at Europe in the Middle Ages, large battles might consist of 30,000 to 40,000 men, often less, but in China, you might find armies within hundreds of thousands, and that makes for such epic panels. There's a lot about Kingdom that I've grown to love, and I want to revisit this topic again, but that's all for now. I hope to bring some attention to this somewhat overlooked manga. Peace, peace.